position as the gardens manager here at Goodwood. Before that, it was a full-time job that also included facilities management. But I don't know about electrical and pavement and plumbing and all that. I knew a little bit, but that was overwhelming. And it was just kind of fun because they decided to split the job in half, and an old friend of mine took the first half of the job, the facilities part, and then a couple months later they decided to hire on, and I landed with the gardens management part. And to be honest, I really didn't know if I could do it when I got the job. I was pretty sure I could. I whipped up that resume and showed all the things that I had done, the eclectic things. I showed my employment stability. For example, I worked in social services for about 18 years at 2 different jobs, and I was a massage therapist for a decade for, doctors and in clinical settings. So, I knew I could apply myself and work hard physically, but when you're dealing with a big piece of property, especially with a historical mission, to maintain historical gardens, it's another thing. And I really didn't have a lot of familiarity with Goodwood, except for having been here for a couple of events. So met with the directors, got the job, and then I worked my fanny off. Hard. I was all over this property and learning what was here and yanking out every weed I could see, and it was overwhelming. And I'm just explaining this to you so you kind of get my take on it or my view on it. But over time, I have just learned how to do certain things. I've picked my battles more wisely. I know what I can get done and what I can't get done. We've blew some air on the volunteer program here and got that built up to be a lot more successful prior to COVID interrupting that. We instigated some monthly work days, second Saturday work days in the community, and it drew out a lot of students and their families and a real interesting group of people, some repeat visitors that just love to get out here, and we all work together on an area. Trying to think what else we've done. There's so many facets to the job, it's never boring. I got to rake some magnolia pods up and leaves up yesterday in an area that it was really messy, and it's the magnolia alley back there. We'll probably walk there. They'll probably be back this morning, but I raked up 4 giant garbage can loads full of them yesterday, and it was such a good and mundane task. Those kind of things you do in your garden when you just clean up and you feel good, and you bent and stretched, and it was a nice day like this overcast day. So it's fun when I get to actually do some work rather than just calling people or trying to figure out what's wrong with the irrigation or, this, that, or the other thing. And it entails a lot. Some of you in this group may surely know more, it's possible, about these gardens or some portion of these gardens than I know. I'm definitely still learning. My background's in art history and medical therapies and social services, so botany and horticulture is not where I focused entirely. But when I was very young, I had a job managing kind of a touristy facility for a citrus grower down south. I managed a showcase citrus grove operation, and it was ornamentals, and there were some homes there on the property, and I was an educator. So I talked to people about the different varieties of fruit and what citrus required and so forth and so on. I got trained as a master gardener at that time, a long time ago when that was in its early stages, and had a big organic. Well, I've lived on several organic farms. I've had several sprout businesses. I'm trying to think what else I've done. I had a radio program. I tease Audrey Post, who's a good friend now. Fortunately, she has her trademark name, Miss Grow It All, because my radio program, way long time ago, 30-something years ago, was called Grow Your Own, and it was on a community radio station. But enough about me. That just gives you kind of an overview of where I come from. They could probably find somebody here at Goodwood, and maybe they will in a couple of years, that's real hardcore, that really knows botany and really knows land management. But for what we've got to work with here, which is not a lot of dollars, especially right now, and with the condition that these gardens are in, what's, just the whole picture, it really does work out. And it's really a joy every day to come here and to follow it week by week and season by season and watch what is going on. It's got that dynamic that I'm sure you all feel, because otherwise you wouldn't be in the garden club, it's just a work in progress, you know what I mean? And it's just a beautiful development as nature unfolds and shows us what's here, what should be here, probably what shouldn't be here in excess. We try not to plant any modern hybrid plants on the property. We try to stick to heirloom varieties. We try to landscape and position things in a way that reflects a lot of the documentation that we have from the past. We go by a document called the Cultural Landscape Report that was prepared quite a long time ago, but it took photographs of these structures from the past and these vistas and viewpoints from the past so that we have things to compare. We have a lot more grass than we used to have in that era. There was a lot more of this kind of sand driveways and sandy fields and areas, more open areas. Of course, the live oaks weren't as mature as they are today, which brings a whole nother thing. We've got trees that people are driving over the roots of continuously. So we have an issue with the conservation and trying to improve the health of our trees. So again, you all probably know, cumulatively certainly, but there's plenty of you out here in this group that probably know a lot more about the plants that we're going to walk around and look at. And so I always like to sort of flip the script a little bit and say, why don't you do the tour and talk to me about things that you see, and certainly ask questions. But if you know something or you want to point something out, please feel free. I'm not the authority and all be all authority about this whatsoever. Goodwood is a place, in my mind, for the community to relax and enjoy and learn from all its storied past, all its eccentricities, all its beauty. So I really try to emphasize that with visitors. And we do run some nursery operations here, and that's kind of where we're going to end up, back at the Heirloom Rose Nursery and Heirloom Plant Nursery. And you're welcome to take a look at the plants there. But more and more, we're putting a lot of those plants onto the property, and then we're able to take cuttings from plants here and cycle them back through so that the community can have them in their yards as well. So any comments or questions starting out? No? Okay, I'm serious. If you see something and you want to say something, shout it out. Just say it. If you have something you want to ask, maybe somebody in the group, or maybe I'll be able to field that question for you. This is the main house, as most of y'all know. I assume a lot of you have been inside that house. It was never highly decorated with landscaping previously. That grapefruit tree over there does replace one that became very mammoth and large, and reportedly had something like 500 or 600 grapefruits on it in one particular season. But that tree is only probably, and by my estimation, maybe 15 years old at the most. So that's not the mammoth tree that was there, but I'm sure that was very stunning and beautiful at that time. And it was probably before things like the palms were added to the side here, or before the sagos, of course, grew up very heavy, or these trees got as advanced as they are. Yeah. So we can walk through. Is often used for wedding ceremonies and sometimes some other kind of special event. Sadly, we're not going to have our family fall festival this year. We skipped it in the spring. Who knows what we're going to do this spring. But, we try to maintain the lawn in a nice way that people want to gather there. Let's go on out here. We'll go ahead and out this way. I don't have an organized tour. I'm always flying by the seat of my pants. Can you tell?
No, it's good.
Yeah. On the property, they're kind of estimated in age to be up to as old as possibly about 500 years old. One of the biggest is over there in front of the Jubilee Cottage. and another is in the back of the games court by the laundry cottage there. That's quite a sprawling tree. We have all kinds of turf here. I've still yet to learn about grasses and turf. It undergoes different things as the seasons come, but we don't have a lot of money for fertilizer or weed and feed and things like that, so we do the best that we can.
Do y'all use all organic, or do you not? Because it's
No.
so expensive.
Yeah, I use it when I can get it at a reasonable rate, and I try to use as little pesticides and herbicides as possible. That's just my personal feeling about things. Hey, Marianne.
Hi. I love the way that sago has been trimmed. It's hilarious.
Oh, that particular piece, that's falling over. That's got to
I just
go.
think it's adorable.
Oh, yeah, it's got to go. David Butler, who used to be a computer and FSU, is one of our really steady volunteers, and David really knows his sagos. So our sagos are real clean and nice and trimmed up right now. But that one, we noticed there's something that's going on with sagos. Has anybody noticed that? I'm thinking it's in a 3 or a 5 year cycle, or they have some pathogen or something, because we're losing some of the trunks. They're kind of deteriorating, and I'm a little bit concerned about it, but I spoke to the ag agency and they just said they hadn't noticed anything in particular. But we're thinning them out a little bit and cleaning them up, because in another 6 months, by summer next year, they'll have pups all up and down the main trunks of them, and they're beautiful and weird and exotic. They're prehistoric. I can see why they survived. The dinosaurs probably didn't even like them, but they've been here a very long time, so we want to respect them and clean them up and keep looking as nice as we can. These are two beautiful Japanese magnolias. We've yet to clear the moss out of the top, but they're very beautiful every spring and summer they come out, and they look real nice. It kind of provides a nice classic look right here. We've got this beautiful area over here with a gorgeous ash magnolia, and people come here sometimes just to see that tree. It's about to lose its leaves. I'll see something out here on the lawn that I think is a piece of paper, and it's a gray-sided back side of the leaf from the ash. We have lots of Sasanqua, camellias, and japonicas. The Sasanqua blooms are coming on now. We're trying to get more native azaleas on the grounds. Dan Miller, that used to have Trillium Nurseries, has been real helpful and gotten us some plants at a lower cost. So we're always looking to put things like that would have been here or would have thrived here in the historical period we're aiming for is about 1913 to 1930. So I can't be dead certain when we choose a plant or we add a plant to the grounds that's where the time frame that it would have been here in, but we attempt to do that, Y'all want to come this way. Watch out for ants. They're ubiquitous. So there's our ash magnolia, and it is kind of a specimen because it's a healthy, balanced shape of a tree. It's beautiful, and I'm guessing in about 3 or 4 weeks, all her leaves will turn beautiful golden yellow. That lasts for about maybe 10 days, and then they drop, and she'll be bare until about April. So it's a really lovely tree. We've planted a small one here on the other side of the property, and we have plans for some more. They're kind of a slow grower. I tried a ground layer for a while with a branch that was laying down on the ground, but someone kept taking the log off of it and picking it back up, so I never got any rooting on that particular branch I was trying to start with. That can be a faster way to get going.
Eva, where's the flower magnolia?
It does flower, and it's beautiful, smaller than most typical magnolia blossoms, and it's very fragrant, and it looks very similar, creamy white, pretty centerpiece, Yeah, and then it gets a pod on it with little red seeds in it. Sometimes you'll find people picking them up thinking they're going to grow one from seed, and that's more power to you, right? Yeah. And that is Mike. Hey, Mike, say hello. That is the hardest working man I know. He comes here every day for free and beautifies things. This Glen, we're calling it, or I forget, we had another name for it the other day. was like just thick and grungy and was full of camphor around these trees. That camellia over there couldn't even be seen. None of the ferns that are, natural to the landscape were in here, or were here a couple of weeks ago. Mike has done tremendous amounts of work. He just loves Goodwood, and he loves to come and take an area and change it, beautify it, bring out its natural beauty. We have a black gum tree over there going around the corner towards that dilapidated middle gate. And, we just couldn't even see any of the specimens, some of the things that we had here on the property at all. We have a buckeye that's over there beside that oak. And we have a lot more to do. We want to plug our holes in the fence lines so we buffer the noise and the view a little bit. Again, let's see.
Sorry, I missed it. She said these precious little understudy bushes. What are those?
These over here,
Uh-huh.
those are beauty berries.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a couple St. John's wort, Marianne, right in front of them. The smaller leaf, the little 2 or 3 little shrubby looking things closer to me in front of the beauty berries are St. John's wort. Mike let me know. And we did have a Chapman rhododendron over here somewhere, but it didn't make it. I had a little fence around it and everything. We had identified it one day with Donna Lagar, but it just didn't make it. So the only thing we want to reintroduce out here is maybe we say we want to unplant some wildflowers. We don't want anything showy. That wouldn't have been apropos for Goodwood's historical time period. But we like to encourage pollinators, and there might have been something here that just blew in or sprouted up in the woods more naturally occurring. We're looking at goldenrod, we're looking at native milkweed. We have some ironweed on the property. I don't really want to necessarily encourage that, but we're looking for some things that might renew and be nice for the birds and the bees and the butterflies and all that. So we desperately need some tree work over here with our old spooky oaks, but it's kind of a good little setting for Halloween time coming up. I mean, these oaks are actually kind of dangerous, as you can see, but tree work is very expensive, as you know. So one thing we have done is we've buddied up to several tree services here in town, and we're getting these beautiful loads of wood mulch. And it's really the best thing we can do for our live oaks, because we can't afford fertilizer and we can't afford air spading for all our trees, but it really fortifies the ground around the tree. And as long as you don't put it up on the trunk itself, it's really kind of a nice look, and it's kind of beneficial to the trees. So anybody have any questions or want to say anything that they know more about? Have y'all ever wondered about Goodwood's background philosophy of gardening? Or I know many of you have been here before. This is not new to you. These grounds are pretty, you're pretty accustomed to them, but I like to give you something different. Towards what used to be the Rev Cafe or Fanny's Cottage. It's got several houses. The Rough House, the Camellia Cottage. This is an area we kind of, I wouldn't say reclaimed, but before I got here, a historical reno had been done on the exterior of the building. Then when I got here, a restaurant owner leased the building and did a retro on the inside. I mean, took it down to the wood lathing and everything, and it was amazing. And that was a nice thing for about a year and a half until COVID hit, that the Rev Cafe was situated there. During that same period, the arbor over the pool had to be removed because it was made of some inferior material and only lasted 7 or 8 years. It was beginning to crumble and be dangerous. So I don't know if y'all have been here or noticed that specifically, but there used to be a pretty neat ornate arbor on top of those pillars over there. The Rose Group, the Tallahassee Area Rose Society, and some of the folks that grow heirloom roses here decided to put in a rose bed by the pool. This was kind of impactful because roses, there used to be a lot of roses at Goodwood. Senator Hodges purportedly had like 400 rose bushes somewhere over on this east side of the property, and then in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, there were a pretty good core group of people who study these type of old garden roses, the rosarians, and they developed a South Lawn rose garden, which is sadly no longer there. So roses are hard here at Goodwood because they have to be pretty much irrigated. We go through periods of drought more and more, and they have to be fed, and they need to be pruned, and they need to be tended. So it was kind of nice that Mary Monchart provided for some masonry work, and we put some of those roses back there in front of the pool. Maybe we won't walk all the way over there, but if that's something you really want to see up close, please stop by there and have a look at it. Right now I've got an irrigation system that's not working so hot, but the roses are okay. Some of the bushes are not thriving due to some other things. I've got to kind of work with them a little bit or replace them. But that is a nice example of those hybrid teas and climbers and the old varieties of roses that are not your Lowe's roses, I always tell folks. There's a pretty beautiful specimen African tea olive there right behind that sign. There's a pretty beautiful specimen Portocorpus tree. I've never seen one so big in my life. I used to hide behind them as a child at my grandmother's house. We could all hide behind that one. And it's beautiful right there on the corner of the old roller rink area. We scalped, well, we had some help. I wouldn't have scalped them so much, but we got into this bed of old President Clay azaleas that were ginormous. I mean, they were 12 feet high, but you couldn't separate them from the smilax and the wisteria and everything else that was all tangled up in there with them, the grapevine, everything else. So we massively cut down a bed of azaleas there, and they're coming back. And we're trying to work with that area and clean up and make that a more beautifully landscaped area, because we've got some grant money and we're doing a process called activating that roller rink area. We're going to try to use it more for family-centric activities, community-based activities, without taking away the historical significance of it, which is a trick in a property like this, that finding that balance. So we're trying to work on that area. That's kind of what we do at all times, is we just move our way around the property and see what we can enhance or what we can clean up or what's going on there that's out of whack or out of balance. And then we try to change it a little bit or introduce something new or, work with it. That's really all you can do on a piece of property like this. I mean, if we had tons of money and a full staff, we could manicure it. But Goodwood was never excruciatingly manicured. The property never existed like that in the past. So hence, this is what we're striving for. But let's just all spin around. I'll jump around the other side. Needs a lot of work. This tree needs a lot of pruning. This area was dedicated by the family of Clara Jane Smith, who was a very innovative, petite woman, I understand. Clara Jane died like the day before I started my job at Goodwood. It was kind of auspicious. And Mary Monchart, who I work with a lot, who's a 95-year-old rose specialist, 94, 95, who's counting, who still lives on her own farm and raises cattle. Amazing woman. She's kind of my Clara Jane, because I never got to meet Clara Jane. But Clara Jane's family donated this pretty double-sided bench, and they said that Clara Jane loved Goodwood, and she would have wanted an area here dedicated to all the volunteers that have come to help on the grounds and in the nurseries over the years. So this area was selected because we have a pretty view of the house and the front lawn. And Frank Douglas and Tallahassee Nurseries got involved and kind of designed the garden with the spirea over there. And we put in the Rudbeckia. The Kunchi palms didn't like it so well here. I'll tell you, there's something, they were kind of in a curved border on either side of the bench going up onto the back portion there called the South Lawn. Y'all know what pipe clay is? Yeah, y'all probably know. When I saw it, I was like, what is that? In the ground. There's a big streak of it that comes right through here. And I'm surprised, but some of the things we initially planted in here didn't do so hot on this side. So we retooled. We put some scraggly toad lilies that are now not scraggly. Aren't those pretty there? And we imported these, or we brought these Chinese rain bells. This is something we grew here at Goodwood at the Heirloom Plant Nursery. And what an ideal place for them. And then we filled in with some of the Crinum asiaticum, you know, that's going to fill in here on this side to match this side a little bit. What is this? This is toad lily. I believe it's perennial. It'll disappear here, but it's spread very nicely because we had like 2 or 3 little sprigs of it just left over one year. And this field when I got here had these dead roses in holes all throughout it. That camellia in the middle was about twice as high, and there was a lovely old wooden arbor, dilapidated though, that had a Lady Banks rose encompassing the whole arbor. I mean, the rose was what was keeping the arbor up. And gradually it was like leaning over, and one day we said, we just gotta get rid of it because it looks so crazy like that. And it is our hope that at some point we can do something up here. I really like open areas. I really like lawn, what they call lawn meadows or lawn gardens. So my inclination might be to get rid of the sprinkler head and the camellia and leave it as an open area and do landscaping a little bit more around the perimeters. But this area has become really important because we'll walk this way, please. We just restored the original Goodwood gate, and it's going to be a pedestrian gate only, with a safe crossing that comes across from the hospital. And you can't see it from here, but we've added a handicap or a disabled accessible sidewalk that curves around, so even if someone's using a wheelchair or some kind of an appliance, they'll be able to get across the street safely and make their way up into a path that gets them in through this gate, which will start to be open shortly during the daytime hours. And that where that pile of mulch, beautiful, nice clean mulch, has been delivered as of yesterday. That's a trailhead that accesses a trail that goes all the way down along the west side border of Goodwood. Now, when I got here, you couldn't see the hospital, but Medical Drive was increased, so we lost 10 feet of foliage there, sadly, but we're working on rebuilding it because we just as soon keep kind of a cloistered feel. That's how it was originally. I mean, the hospital, where the hospital sits, all of that whole footprint was Goodwood. The magnolias that we're going to see in the back, the remnants of the LA, went on for 1 mile and wound up over there where Frank and Pepper Willis have the old Willis Dairy that pops out on Centerville Road. So, when students come or anybody come, I say, think about this, over 100 times the size that it is now. At times it was massive. At times, part of the parcels that were attached to this parcel went all the way out to Lake Lafayette, which is close to I-10. So, this was a sprawling plantation and a property that morphed over time. Now we're down to the 21 acres with the East Woods over there behind us that backs up to the Cancer Center. Obviously, we're surrounded by medical complex. So the dynamics for Goodwood have changed a lot, Some people come here and they tell me they've been in Tallahassee for over 20 years and they've never come on this property before. It's amazing how often someone will tell you that. I'm sure all of you, is there anybody here that's their first time here today? No, but you see, you guys have all been here. I knew it, okay. Anyway, a lot of the things here are kind of old-fashioned. There's a lily bed over here that was until very previously tended by a woman way in her 90s as well. She would come and work in it a few hours, and then she would work with the greenhouse people. She still comes. She's an amazing woman. I've learned a lot from her. But there's crinum lilies, glorioso lilies, several varieties of things, day lilies, and she's kind of got them in a sunny spot as it goes around the corner of this azalea bank here. And I think it needs some kind of a shade arbor or something, but it's kind of down on the list. But it maintains. And I think this will be a beautiful access. We have a lot of plants for down around that gate. Nothing too elaborate or ornate, but we're going to put native ferns up under each of the oaks. We're going to rescreen, you can't tell there's a fence there, but there is. We're going to rescreen in that open gap leading up to the corner of the gate. So, we're going to kind of make it approachable and aesthetically beautiful for people when people walk in by way of the pedestrian entrance. So there's all these big projects that happen here that, you know, everything is not manicured. We have tons of invasives up in this azalea bed over here, for example. Tons more cleaning out to go. We're trying to fill in some areas that previously were left unlandscaped. Like we've put a ton of donated daylilies. I have a source in Havana, and she brings me box loads and bucket loads of daylilies, but she can't identify them. So until I can grow them here, I couldn't tell you what they are, but I'm sure they're beautiful. So we've kind of put them in there at the end, going around the oak there. And I hope in 2 or 3 years, that's a lush, gorgeous, beautiful, healthy, blooming bed, you know. We're not trying to be Disney. We're not trying to add tons of color to every portion of Goodwood, but we are trying to enhance with the plants that should have and would have been here a little bit more than previously we've had at Goodwood. You know, we're trying to jazz it up a little bit. But this is a real beautiful area. Zone. I'm trying to get some mulch around these trees. Here's a little stand of ironwood kind of bloomed out. This meadow holds a lot of stuff. We've got stuff coming up in it right now that is either an early immersion of snowbells or narcissus or something like that. I don't think they're daffodils, confused that it's spring, but it could be. I'll have to wait till one pops open and I see what it is. See all the little green tufts out in there?
Oh, yeah.
We just finished a bumper crop of beautiful red-orange hurricane lilies, aka spider. I think they're spider lilies they're called as well. That's just stunning out here. In fact, if you've been here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, you would have said the big one is coming because they were everywhere this year. And this has been really interesting to me. Here's an example. Linda Yates, who founded or instigated that lily bed around the backside of those azaleas there, she calls it Margaret's lily bed in homage to Margaret Hodges, who is really why we have Goodwood still the way that it is today. Margaret, and then Fanny Tears before her, particularly over in this area, brought some things that she thought would thrive here. The famous daffodils that are over by the swimming pool and the rough house, and some of which have ended up over here, are a Mediterranean variety of daffodils. Now, if anybody wants to borrow Linda Van Beck's book from me, because she's the end-all be-all authority, she and her daughter, on daffodils, I lay down my grasp on the knowledge of daffodils, but I do know a little something about them. And what I've noticed about this meadow, and this is how this all ties together, Linda said to me one day, she says, oh, those Bidens, oh, those Spanish needles in the meadow, they're just taking over, they're gonna take over Goodwood. Well, when a 90-something-year-old lady tells you that, you know, your ears perk up, and I knew that. I'm from Florida. I knew how pervasive they can be. And all of a sudden I took a look, and they were everywhere. They were choking out the lyre leaf sage, which is pretty unchokeable. So over the past 2 years, we've hauled truckloads of Bidens pulled up by the root out of this meadow. And it's an interesting study because we don't have them all gone, as you can see, but we have them a lot more under control. And now I'm starting to see different things emerge in this zone that previously didn't have a chance to come up, it seems like. So there's a balance, and you know, it's a little hard to figure out and understand. We mow this meadow about 3 times a year in midsummer after all the spring blooming is done with, and before we want the bulbs to start, you know, building up and storing up energy. And we leave it alone for a while. We've planted another ash magnolia over there. It's kind of a little hard to see. It has a few brown leaves and some nice green ones on the top. We've replenished the trail along the woods there, and it's a pretty nice trail. You can walk it, you know. There's a couple of different access points with some arrow wood viburnum, and what else have we put out there? We're starting to look at things that we have abundance of. We would like to import some wax myrtle because we have very little compared to other species on the property. Oh, we were recently gifted about 500 baby trees from Bartlett Tree Experts. Very nice folks. They've done some tree work here on the property, following the footsteps of Armstrong Tree Service, which is slowing down a bit. But if anybody needs a baby tree for their yard, I have some beautiful ones, and I will give you one. I had to move them all to 1-gallon pots from little tiny tight muslin bags that had to be cut away, but I've got all kinds of stuff. So if you're interested in planting a tree of some sort, check with me, because I have 15 or 20 different types, and they're thriving in their new happy 1-gallon pots. They could even stay that way until spring, no problem, and then you could set it out. But anyway, I know this is all kind of rambling, but you're probably getting the picture a little bit. The property is a head scratcher. You have to go every day. I have to go, oh my gosh, what needs to be done? What needs to be done first? What needs to be done the worst, you know? And it's never all going to be caught up and done, but it's beautiful, and we enjoy it, and we try to relax into it and honor, you know, those people that came before us that cared about this property. This is a pretty bed over here. Mike has embellished it tremendously with the gift of the Havana lady, who also brings us irises, not just daylilies. She comes here with big boxes of unidentified irises. So we've kind of made this an iris bed, but what it really is an homage to the Torreya tree, and we have 2. We have a little baby one there and one over there. They look like, you know, evergreens or Christmas trees. They're pretty rare. Y'all probably know the story, you know, or the background of the Torreya tree, that the botanist who discovered it out on the Apalachicola Bluffs was a friend of Hardy Kroom, who was one of the original owners of Goodwood. And so I think Torreya named a little plant that he found after Hardy Kroom, and I've not seen one yet, but it's supposedly around here somewhere, the Kroomia. And then the Torreya tree was named for, I've forgotten his first name. So was it John? I forgot. But anyway, it's a beautiful tree, and they're very slow growing, but I'm happy that ours are healthy and thriving right here, because I think it's a nice addition. It also happens to be my daughter's middle name.
Yeah.
Pretty kind of special.
Eva, what did you say the original?
And then Senator Hodges, who was Margaret Hodges' first husband, he liked to piddle and garden, so he took old iron bedsteads and stuck them in the ground, and he grew roses out here before these oaks became too pervasive and blocked the sunlight. So we have a lot of pictures of what this used to be like, but I'm not sure what year it was, maybe around 2000. Someone ponied up because the place was a mess, and they decided to put in this more formal garden with the masonry work and the Cephalotaxis. And this garden only blooms white. It's got all the camellias are alboplenas in the middle, and the snow on the mountain, the Shishi-gashiras around the perimeter. And that's a Lady Banks rose. It does bloom a little bit cream colored.
Eva, do you mind turning around so we can hear you? I'm sorry.
That's okay. And the Glorioso is volunteer. The Glorioso lily on the fence is volunteer, so we're certainly not going to extricate that. Mike came along and took the rectangular bed over there against the little retaining wall, which was empty, and he brought Japanese roof irises and a beautiful curcuma that's white, curcuma ginger, and there's a few of those in the center. So those roof irises have spread, I don't know, 8 times the original ones that he put in. They really go to town. So we're gonna have to pull some out soon and pot them up and sell them, but in keeping with the white theme, that's, and it really does look gorgeous in there when it's mowed. We're on a half-time schedule with our mow and blow contractor due to money shortage. So sometimes we have a little shaggy area and we have to call Matt, and he rushes over and mows in time for an event, our limited event schedule. Including a daffodil display, a 4-H garden. We still can't, does anybody know why this golden rain tree isn't blooming like our other one? Anybody know? We haven't done anything to it, and it bloomed once since I've been here, but we can't figure out why it's not blooming. And it may be that it's ill, but it looks pretty hardy. Mike's put in all these flowers for pollinators. Mike and David reinstalled some unused antique fence panels back there, and that's one of the entrances to the trail. It's really quite beautiful. There's stumps along the trail and snags that we believe were the outcroppings of a red cedar grove that I believe went that way. It was more over there by Walgreens, let's say. I think there's just some remnants of it here that you can see still in the woods, but there's not enough remnants to tell me that the grove was particularly situated here. But it's pretty lovely back there. It's very shady. Bug spray would be recommended, or walking with long pants and shoes would be recommended. You get down past those boxwood, and there's quite an array of camellias and azaleas down in there that someone intentionally planted. This year we air layered. We made about 45 air layers off of our camellias because we were finally getting to the point where we could clearly identify our blooms. So that's kind of nice because we're going to have some replacement camellias, and we may even sell a few if somebody really wants one. But anyway, Mike and David did a big cleanup in the old greenhouse, which is kind of trying to fall down. One day we'd like to preserve it or replace it. But it's pretty shabby right now, but it's a really beautiful old structure. Beds back here, which had vines growing all around. I mean, you couldn't even tell that was a pear tree. Look at it, it's in bloom in the fall. And we planted up some annuals, and we developed the trail going down into the woods over there and lined it with some crinum and cleaned out and left native species like our beautyberries. Hummers really love it down here, needless to say. And there's a beautiful camellia walk that had to intentionally have been put here by someone that goes off there towards the hospital. And it's really stunning. Come back in February. it'll be worth your while, you know. And we have more and more people coming over, and we just see them quietly head off into the woods, and there they go down the trail. So more and more people are beginning to discover that. Really nice. But we can cut through here. Up in here among the peers. And it was a disaster back here. It was a place that I was hoping people would come past those boxwoods to see, because I was so embarrassed about it. But this is what some weeks of hard work and just plugging along with very little resources. We used some mulch, we used some plants that weren't sold at a plant sale, and we stuck them out in here. We had places we had abundant crinum. We've got this pretty hidden ginger, this low variety, the tall variety. I forget what the exact names are. And we just began to fill in with some things. We grew some zinnias and planted them over there. And we had 4 or 5 kinds of butterflies and hummingbirds simultaneously frittering around over there. It's kind of the end of their season. But this is a nice spot. This is where we used to do the annual spring hush arbor, which is a lovely ceremony. When there were slaves, probably right here at, well, definitely right here at Goodwood, but the slaves would have a celebration and a spiritual ceremony when the master went away, and they would sing songs and play spiritual music and gather in a nice natural setting. And that's a beautiful ceremony that was reenacted here at Goodwood several times, but we had to cut that out this year, of course, because of COVID. So anyway. Previously, and some of y'all may have been coming here to Goodwood long enough to recognize that this was used as a parking lot all the way up to the structures previously. And what good insight to bring the games court down a little bit and install the sidewalk and keep people a little bit away from the buildings. Sadly, these oaks get a lot of wear and tear on them by people driving past here every day. But can you imagine people used to park right up next to the buildings in this zone here? That's just a little too close for us. Historical property. Anyway, this is a lovely garden donated by Mr. Midyat. I forgot Payne. Payne is his first name. He's a guy in his 90s that still raises cattle over in Madison County. Can you believe it? And this is dedicated to his wife Jean, who I've got to clear that little sign there so you can actually see who it's in honor of. And things out here bloom white or bloom blue or purple, because that was Jean's favorite color. And I heard a sweet story that when Jean used to come and volunteer here, she'd bring her little granddaughters who are now grown women, and they said they were coming with grandmother to Happywood. So I love that. Isn't that sweet? To work, yeah. So donated for Jean. And this is what's left of that magnolia alley that I told you about. Not too much, and they're pretty creaky. A limb will fall off every now and then and shock us, but we try to keep it safe and everything. And there's a lot of nice plants in here, you know, peacock gingers, agapanthus, holly ferns, southern ferns, umbergia, you know. We try to keep it pretty lush. That's more of that cephalotaxis. And it's kind of a pretty plant. It's a little, when it dies, it dies. We need to do some replacement here. And this is kind of the wild zone of Goodwood. But then we get back in here to the nurseries.